I finally feel like the summer months are upon us. I mean, I know that summer doesn't officially start until June 21st, but finally we've got this wonderful weather. It's been a harsh winter and it was kind of a rainy early spring for us, but here we are moving into those summer months, and it's exciting. We're ready to kind of enjoy God's creation. And I know for a lot of people that means going up north. For other people, it will mean vacation somewhere. For some, it might mean just taking days off and just enjoying the outdoors. I know that when I was a kid, summer was that time of really taking a break. I mean, before I had to get a summer job as a kid, it just meant that no school, and I could go and we'd play outside and we'd play hide and seek until it was late at night, and mom and dad would call us in, and it was just a great time. It was a great time of just enjoying life and kind of resting. And that kind of got me to thinking a little bit about this concept of Sabbath. And I know I've talked about this idea of Sabbath before. And, for a lot of us, that's what vacation time is, or that's what our day off is Sabbath. I know, for us, we recently took a vacation down to Disney World. And for me, being in Disney World is not necessarily a rest. I mean, my typical day here would be about the typical week would be about 75,000 steps, because I keep track of them on my Fitbit. But boy, when I'm in Disney World, typical week is 160,000 steps. I mean, I'm doubling what we do. So, where do we find that Sabbath rest, and how do we really appreciate that time? Well, I was reading about the Sabbath, and I turned to the place in Scripture where the Sabbath is talked about, and it's commanded for the people to take a Sabbath. And there's a couple things that really shocked me about it. So just listen to this commandment to live by the Sabbath. It says this: "The Lord said to Moses, you yourself are to speak to the Israelites. You shall keep my Sabbath, for this is a sign between you and me and throughout your generation, given in order that you may know that I am the Lord your God and have sanctified you. You shall keep the Sabbath, because it is holy for you. Everyone who profanes it," listen to this, "everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath shall be cut off from among the people. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh day it is the Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath," here it is again, "shall be put to death. Therefore the Israelites shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout all their generations, perpetually as a covenant. It will be a sign forever between you and me and the people of Israel, that in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and the seventh day he rested." Wow, I mean, I read that and I thought, that's fairly harsh. I mean, if you don't take the day of rest, you're going to be put to death. It's just crazy almost to think of that. But then I started to do a little more study on what the Sabbath was truly all about, and I began to understand it a little bit more. Maybe not the harsh capital punishment part of it, but I read something that I thought was really interesting. It said this: when it comes to the Sabbath, God tells a group of people who have been working around the clock for hundreds of years and who are now trying to find enough food to feed thousands of people in the middle of the desert that they should take a day off. It must have sounded absurd. If they didn't work that day, they didn't eat that day. You see, that was the life of the Israelites before they went out into the desert. It was the life of slavery. And they spent a life of slavery, and they spent day after day being commanded to do nothing but work. And that command to work got harder and harder and harder as they remained in that place of slavery. They were given tasks to do that were really, frankly, impossible for them to do. And so when God leads them through Moses away from this place of slavery in Egypt out into the wilderness, God is trying to establish a different, not just a different pace of life for them, but the fact that God now, as their leader, as opposed to the Pharaoh, who was their leader, who was the one who commanded them. God now, who was the new person that would command their life, was giving them a day off. You see, the Sabbath wasn't just about resting from your work. It was about trusting God. It was about trusting God with your life. It's about being able to take enough time to breathe, knowing that God is watching over us and God is taking care of us. So yeah, Sabbath is about rest, but it's not just about rest. It's finding space in our lives where we feel as if we have to go to make the most of everything that we're doing, to be able to make sure that we're making a living. It's about taking time to trust in the gifts that God has given us, in the time that God has given us, and in the moment to enjoy life that God has given us. So here's my hope. This summer, find a time as Sabbath, not as a way to follow some rule, but as a way to find space in your life to trust the God who created you and said, you know what, it's okay. It's okay to take a day off, to take time off. But in the midst of doing that, recognize that this time is a gift from God.